From the William B. Travis Building in Austin, Texas, we're keeping Texas energy on track. Here's your host, Bryce Doobie.
Welcome to Texas Energy on Track, the official podcast of the Railroad Commission of Texas. I am your host, Bryce Doobie, joined as always by, my partner in crime here, our producer, Nick Cranock. Nick?
Always the partner in crime, yeah. Glad to be here, glad to be doing another episode now that we're doing more. It's a lot more fun to be in the studio more often, talking about some pretty interesting topics.
Yeah, and today's topic, it's fairly critical, pun intended. We are joined here today by two amazing folks here at the Commission, Gilbert Herrera, who is the Assistant Director of Field Operations, and Misty Dozier, who is the Assistant Director of Administrative Compliance, both with the Critical Infrastructure Division. How are y'all doing today?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Great. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we're glad to have y'all here. One thing that's kind of unique, this is, as listeners can know, this is the first time we've had two guests on, so we're really excited to actually have two people coming in to talk about what they do. First and foremost, let's get into some introductions. Misty, you're closer to me here in the studio. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do here at the Commission, how long you've been with the RRC?
I've been with the Commission going on 29 years. I've worked in various capacities at the Commission. P5, I was the Commission's investigator, worked in drilling permits, central records, and now critical infrastructure.
Hi there. I've been with the Railroad Commission since 2018. So started out as an engineer in the Houston office for oil and gas. Within a few months, was the lead plugger or the plugging lead of the Houston area. So, plugging orphan wells. When CID got created, joined the team with Misty.
And Gilbert, could you just give a quick summary of exactly why the Critical Infrastructure Division was formed in the first place?
So the creation of CID was a direct response of the failures of Texas energy infrastructure during Winter Storm Uri. So for those of you unaware, that happened February 2021. The storm caused millions of Texans to lose power for days due to the failure of power generation facilities. A significant number of these power gen facilities, including natural gas plants, went offline because their equipment was not ready for that kind of weather. So you had a lot of freeze-offs. Once these went offline, then the issue was made even worse and compounded by the fact that natural gas facilities supplying natural gas to these power plants also froze and lost power. After the storm, there was a lot of investigations that concluded some key risk factors that were in place that created this issue. So one of those was the lack of communication between key stakeholders and personnel. Natural gas facilities that needed electricity to operate lost power. There was a lot of road issues and logistic issues, and you had a lot of equipment freeze-offs. Texas legislator passed Senate Bill 3, which directed our executive director and the RRC to establish and enforce new rules related to the natural gas infrastructure created by this new division. So these rules helped mitigate some of these key factors that I just named off. So one of these is the CID filings. So CID filings help ID critical gas suppliers, which include gas wells above 250 MCF a day, oil leases that are 500 MCF a day in production, gas plants, natural gas pipelines and their components, so compressors, meters, regulators, control centers, natural gas storage, SWDs, NGL, transportation and storage, and then local distribution pipelines and their components. So these critical gas suppliers that are critical customers are required to file with us. Also, critical customers are required to file with their local utility. And critical customer means natural gas suppliers that do require electricity to operate. The requirement also to build the electricity supply chain map for Texas, which we now have RC map, which allows operators to identify and confirm facilities that are part of the natural gas supply chain for power generation in Texas. That includes direct pipelines to natural gas gen facilities. It includes compressors, meters, regulators. It includes storage, gas plants, oil leases, gas wells, and SWDs. So every type of infrastructure that is part of the natural gas generation supply chain. See, it also requires operators that are designated critical and on the electricity supply chain map or directly serving natural gas to electric generation facilities to implement weather preparation standards to sustain operation of their facility and to correct stoppages that happened during a previous weather emergency. It also requires operators that have a stoppage during a weather emergency to report this accordingly and to fix a stoppage in the future.
So, and just for our listeners out there, I kind of jumped into it quick, but when we're talking critical infrastructure, it's all of those pieces and parts that move hydrocarbons to energy producers and things like that here within the state, correct?
Well, it's actually the natural gas. So natural gas is really, So there's about 196 natural gas fired power plants in the state of Texas. And there's a lot of gas that gets produced in Texas. And we had to identify what that infrastructure was. It was really difficult to come up with that supply chain and try to figure it out. So we reversed engineered it. We started at the power plants, identified those critical facilities, and worked our way down until we got to oil and gas leases and saltwater disposal. So it was a pretty tough process in a relatively short period. One of the things that our commissioners did a really great job, and they really wanted us to take this seriously. And so the commission took it really seriously, and we wanted to make sure that by that next winter, we were already up, we were already inspecting, we were already identifying that critical supply chain.
So what are some of those things that y'all are inspecting? I mean, as part of this, because I know you established rules and determined all throughout that supply chain, like you said, how does this process work, working with operators and figuring all of that out?
Yeah, that's a good question, because just to add, like Ms. D said, there's over 190 natural gas power plants in the state of Texas. Well, that 190 turns into over 6,000 facilities pretty quickly as far as what's actually powering those power plants. So when you start to trace back from the power plant, you have your transmission lines, you have your compressors on your transmission lines, you have your gas processing facilities, you have your storage facilities, you have your compressors on your gathering lines, you have your gas leases, you have your oil leases. Even though they produce mainly oil, they're still producing gas with that oil. And then you have the saltwater disposal wells that are needed for those leases and other facilities to dispose of produced water, or water that comes from either compressing gas or removing water from the gas stream. So we're inspecting those facilities that are all tied to those 190. We're kind of broken into 4 regions. So we have the North region, we have the East region, the South region, and then the West region. And an easy way to kind of think about it is your major play formations of natural gas are going to be the Haynesville, which is the East region. You're going to have the Eagle Ford, the South region, Permian Basin's the West. And then the North is going to be the Barnett Shale. And then you also have some more micro formations like the Dorado, which is in the South region. It's a really big gas play right now that's being highly developed right now by EOG and Total Energies. You have the Austin Chalk, you have the Garnett Wash up in the North Panhandle. The Anadarko is also in the Panhandle. So from those big gas formations, you have pretty much our 4 regions, and each region is going to be responsible for their area, ensuring that they have direct connects, direct ties to communication to these facilities. Their managers, they're the ones that set up inspections for winter and summer. And so that's kind of just a brief, breakdown of what or how we're broken down to, and then why.
And it's good that you mentioned that, talking about summer and winter, because a lot of people, obviously, because of Uri, they think about the winter inspections, but you guys have summer inspections as well, and there's weatherization for summer like there is for winter, but it's different.
Yeah, so the easy way to also think about that is, so the enemy during the winter is water. So obviously water will freeze at 0 degrees Celsius. So if you remove the water, obviously there's nothing to freeze. So that's going to be your number one play is A, trying to remove the water. B, if you can't remove the water, heat it up to where it's not reaching a 0 degrees Celsius or below. That's going to be your number one thing before we get further into details on other weatherization. And then for summer, the major enemy is going to be efficiency. So when something gets hot, especially mechanical components, the efficiency drops. So something that, say like a gas plant, it's processing at an 80 to 90% efficiency rate. During the summer, when it gets really hot, that efficiency rate drops to 60, 70%, and possibly even more. So what you thought you were producing or processing, it drops down due to the heat because of your efficiency factor. So that's what you're trying to combat there. And so that's being done by, your heat exchangers, you're trying to cool your system. So things like that are going to be, the major differences between winter and summer. And as you know, Texas is usually pretty hot, so we're pretty good at the summer. It's just the winter that, from Uri, we've had to get better on.
What are you looking for with an inspection? How does all of that work, and how often are these inspections sort of taking place?
Yeah, so our winter inspections, they officially start December 1st. So that's when we have our attestations that are due December 1st, and we'll start our inspections. We have our inspections for the winter broken down into priorities. So we have priority 1 inspections, and those are typically going to be all your gas processing facilities, your storage facilities, your direct connect transmission tie-ins to power plants, and then some of your major movers of natural gas on the compression side, so some of the compressors on there, and then any lease that produces over 5,000 MCF a day, that's going to be a priority 1. So we're inspecting those first because those are, just being priority 1, obviously the most important. They're the big players in the whole chain for natural gas in Texas. And so we're going out there, we're ensuring that they have weather preparations in place to sustain operation during a weather event. So we make sure they're compliant with their weatherization. We make sure they have their training in place, they have safety considered for their employees. They have the environment protected. So those on a high level are what we're looking at for the winter or the upcoming winter season.
And what are some of those things so you're looking for winter and then we move through that and then we're getting ready for Texas summer? You said we're pretty well, we understand that one. We know Texas is hot. So that one's, the inspection I'm sure is different, like you said, but is there anything in particular you're keeping an eye out for summer seasons?
Yeah, so for summer seasons, it's kind of narrowed down to those facilities that do or are impacted by the heat. So those are going to be also to your gas processing facilities, your storage facilities, your compressors. And we're looking for things that a lot of times your systems or your facilities are technically designed already to stay cool, but we're ensuring that, heat exchangers are in place, they're working properly, they have their cooling systems in place. A lot of times lately, we've been seeing a lot more shade being utilized. So a lot of overhead coverage that's being built just to protect during the summer, which also technically kind of works as a 2-in-1 because we're seeing a lot of retractable buildings put in place to where you could kind of open up the walls for the summer. So you'll still have your shade, but have air circulation coming in to cool your facility or help with cooling. But then during the winter, you could close down those walls to kind of protect from the wind, which has the opposite effect during the winter, which will have your wind chill factor.
So when we're talking weatherization, I grew up in the Northeast. I'm used to wrapping pipes in the winter in my house so they don't freeze and things like that. Is it just that but bigger, or are there some specialized things that really happen as part of all of this?
Yeah, there's actually quite a bit of new technology. Well, I wouldn't say new, but a lot of technology in Texas that's probably new. It's probably being done in Canada, in the northern areas that have this natural gas production. But we're seeing a lot of adoption with catalytic heaters. So that's when you have a catalyst like platinum. It interacts with most typically natural gas and oxygen. And with that reaction creates heat. So we're talking about flameless heat that's being utilized safely out there at these high natural gas facilities. So that's being put in place in a lot of areas. We're also looking at a lot of updated technology regarding SCADA systems. So a lot of digital measuring devices. We have operators that are main headquartered in Houston, and they're able to see every single asset in the state of Texas with their control facility. So they're able to measure real time. What are the real issues? Is there any pressure drops, temperature drops, volume drops, and then also get ahead of it. So if they're seeing these drops, they're able to use these actuators at their facility in Houston, control stuff that's in the Permian, and actually move gas around to avoid these issues from happening. A lot of common occurrences that have been happening over the years is the adoption of electrical compressors. So instead of using a natural gas to drive your compression, you're seeing a lot of electrical compressors, which, these electric compressors, they perform a lot better in the winter. The only issue with those, which we discussed earlier, is now they are relying on the electricity. So they need electricity to operate. That's where the supply chain, though, comes into play.
When we're talking about all of this, I guess, Misty, on your side, when we're talking administrative compliance, I understand from a field operations going out and taking a look at things. What are we looking at from the compliance side? How does all of that work?
So we have several regulatory filings that Austin is responsible for, primarily the critical designation form or the critical exception form. So the critical designation form, what that does is these operators provide that information to the commission. It provides us key and vital information related to their utilities. This information goes out to the utilities. Those utilities will then take that information and identify those facilities during weather events and take them into account. So kind of like 911 or, like during a weather event, they're not going to shut down a hospital. They're not going to shut down a fire station. Now they're going to take these oil and gas facilities and ensure that they're taken into account. Doesn't mean that they're guaranteed electricity, but they just know that these are critical facilities. And so it's crucial, like during these timeframes, especially where, in the middle of summer, all the kids are at home, dryers are coming on and everybody's cooking and stuff like that. So a lot of electricity is being used. So it's important that they know that these facilities are going to maintain that gas flow.
And Misty, too, she's also underplaying it because probably one of the biggest issues operators had during Uri was not freeze-offs, but got their power shut off at their facility. So they've never had issues at their facility due to the winter, but during Uri, when they lost power, they couldn't produce, they couldn't process, And that was the biggest, or one of the biggest factor for a lot of these gas operators.
Well, and it's not like you can just flip the switch and turn an oil and gas lease on. You can't just flip a switch and just start operations. It takes some time. And so it's important that these key facilities do maintain electricity so that way we get our power, we get our AC, we get our heat.
Yeah, if you shut off power to a gas plant, it usually takes 24 to 48 hours just for that gas plant to get up and going again.
So when we're talking in those types of situations with that kind of emergency role and things, I know there's all sorts of exercises and things that happen out there. What is CID's role really within like the emergency operation space? So let's hypothetically, knock on wood, but it's January 2026 and it's 7 degrees here in Texas. What are y'all doing? What's kind of the setup for y'all?
So there are a lot of things that occur ahead of time. So typically we're in contact with the state climatologist. We're in contact with the Texas Department of Emergency Management. We have a SOC team that's not part of CID, but we work extremely closely with. And they take all of that data that we have and that we provide to PUC, and we're there to help operators. So we have what's called a 9 a.m. weather call. And so all the top producers in each one of the regions are on this call early in the morning, and they provide us briefings and updates of where their gas volumes are, if they're running into any issues. And then we convey that information over to our SOC team who, like, let's say somebody got their electricity cut off and they're a major player and they're literally sitting across the row. PUC is sitting across from them. So we can communicate that information effectively and quickly so that we can resolve that and get that gas continuing to flow. So we're doing those calls every day, every morning, sometimes a couple of times a day, depending on the severity of the event. And so typically CID is on call 24/7 during those times. We've had 9 confirmed winter storms since Winter Storm Uri, then one that was pretty significant.
In winter storms, maybe people may think it's not just snow. You're talking about snow, ice, prolonged cold over a long period of time, the wind bringing in the cold air, things like that, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I think everybody's like, they think of Winter Storm Uri, and we did have a lot of snow, more than we normally did. But like in Winter Storm Elliott, we had the same, time span of cold weather, and it held for a lengthy period of time over the majority of the state of Texas. And so, like, just for example, like during Winter Storm Uri, the average production at that point was 18.75 BCFs a day. However, during Winter Storm Elliott, the comparable event to Winter Storm Uri, we were producing at 24.89 BCFs. That's a lot.
And that's billion cubic feet, right?
Yeah.
Making sure I understand that.
Yeah, a billion cubic feet. That's a lot of gas.
Absolutely.
And I honestly believe, and I think we talk about this all the time, is it's attributed to weatherization. Operators are taking that into account. That communication with other state agencies is occurring. And because of all of these efforts, it's shown, it's been proven, that this has been successful.
And even this past winter storm this year, we worked a lot with TxDOT and a lot of operators that were having issues with their lease roads and clearing roads. So even if it's, now with issues they're directly having with freeze-off points or, direct weatherization, a lot of times it's stuff where we really can't control and regulate, but we do have partners, the TxDOT, that can help us in these situations where, we could provide information to TxDOT on major roads that, hey, if possible, we need help clearing this road for operators.
And that's that communication piece, going back to that you guys said was so critical, that really has been built up throughout the past few years now. I mean, it sounds like that's kind of the biggest part in all of this. Alongside the rulemaking and things, and obviously as well, but like that being able to have that seat at the table with the SOC and being able to bring operators and everyone and be talking, that really, again, I keep going back and not trying to make a pun, but it's critical.
Yeah, that communication is key. And I think our industry partners have been fantastic, and they've been willing to participate with us and provide us and be forthcoming with that information whenever they're running into issues, because they're realizing, this is something that we can assist with and we can help with. And so it's just been very successful because of that communication.
And what's also helped us too is since Uri, even before any winter storm does happen or take place, or even we expect a winter storm, we're already on these morning calls that we mentioned earlier with the top producers in the state, with the top midstream operators in the state. And we're already in communication with them. Are they seeing any issues? Do they have any needs right now? What are y'all seeing out there where we could help? So we're already trying to get ahead of potential issues just with communicating with them.
So with the scope of all of this, again, Texas is huge. There's a lot of infrastructure. How many inspectors do y'all have? How does all of that work? How do these folks get trained? What's sort of like the process for all of that?
Currently, we have about 50 inspectors statewide. So we inspect over 7,000 facilities yearly to help ensure that there is compliance of weather emergency preparation measures. Inspectors assess weatherization and are trained to do so. Training-wise, we train inspectors extensively just because the type of facilities that we deal with, it's not just your everyday gas well or oil well. We're dealing with the big leases. We're dealing with compressors. We're dealing with gas processing facilities, storage. We're dealing with transmission lines, and we're also dealing with these operators directly. So like one of the things that we are doing just to make sure the operators are compliant with the training is we're going over their training extensively. So making sure they have training in place for them to safely operate during the winter. So any winter training that they take in place, any winter drills, do they have methods in place to where they do have to have a shutdown? What's their plan there? What's their plan for employees when there's a storm coming? So a lot of these operators realize that, their number one asset is their employees. So everybody needs to take care of their employees. And so a lot of their training involves how can we safely operate while having a safe environment for employees. So they'll set up these camps on site so their employees could stay there for a week or longer. Some of them have, capabilities of housing their families at hotels just so they could actually keep their facility operating during these emergency times. So they're also making sacrifices, but they're also providing this training to help employees operate safely.
Is that something our inspectors either look for or are provided when they're out on these inspections? They go to the facilities. This is something where the operators, the people in the facility, show them the training setup, like backup equipment, cots, things like that?
Yeah, to both. So we actually do a lot of pre-meetings with operators beforehand, and we'll meet with the big operators to go over their facilities in extensive detail in what we call pretty much a training meeting to verify the training's in place. At the site, we verify that the employees that are actually operating this facility, they have been through the training that their company said they have. What's their frequency? How often do they take the training? What are these training documents? Like how do they look like? Where are they stored? How do you ensure the new employees are trained? Things like that we are verifying.
There's so much to all of this. And again, it's really interesting to see how quickly this has grown over the past few years. This is kind of a curveball question for you, Misty, because you said at the beginning, you've been with the commission how long again?
29 years.
29 years. This is a new thing. This has to be exciting. What is your kind of takeaway, having been with the RC for a while now and having seen this kind of evolution on this piece in particular?
I was really honored to be asked to be a part of this because this is the first division that has been set up in the commission in 45 years. In addition to that, no other state has weatherization rules. Texas is the first state to do this. And so what a cool way to kind of, I don't want to say end my career, but to start up a new division, and something that's so important to the state of Texas. And then something that's so brand new and you can start it from the ground up. It was really exciting. We've gone through a lot. It's, been a lot of work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, literal tears probably. But, we've done it.
Are there other states following in our footsteps with weatherization rules? Do you know that?
We've had other states reach out. I know Louisiana's reached out to us, a few other states, but as of now, nobody else has adopted any of these methods.
Thank y'all so much for coming on to talk about all of it, because I think this is one of those topics that people are kind of aware of and things like that, but don't really know everything that's going into it. So thank you, first of all, for the work that y'all do and helping us. Winter, summer, year round, like you said. So again, thanks for coming on the show and thanks for all the work that you do.
No, we appreciate you guys for having us and, putting it out there for the public. I think it's important that we educate the public as well as our regulated industry on what all the good work that the Railroad Commission does.
So, Nick, I learned a bunch today. I think that was a really great conversation. Really enjoyed having both Gilbert and Misty on today. I know we've got some more great things coming down the road. We always kind of highlight these here and there. I'm looking forward to some of these conversations we're going to have. But in the meantime, where can folks find us? I know there's previous episodes you can go back and listen to if some of the things you heard today sparked some interest, talking about some of the other safety things we've talked about, produced water, all those types of things. Where are we on the internet?
Yeah, check us out. Of course, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, iHeartRadio, YouTube. We're everywhere. We make it easy for you guys to find us, and make sure you do subscribe it and share the podcast as well. The holiday season's coming up. We got Thanksgiving pretty soon and then Christmas, New Year. So a lot of people are going to be traveling. So download episodes, download the show on your favorite podcast app and share it so you can learn more of what we do across the state of Texas. And then, of course, social media. We are out there on X, TXRRC, Railroad Commission of Texas, on LinkedIn, Facebook, and on Instagram as well. We're putting out sound bites, clips, and a lot of information regarding the podcast, as well as other things on social media announcements and things like that. So be sure to follow us on your favorite social media app.
And as always, for anyone who has any questions or comments about anything we talk about on the show, if you like, hey, what was that regulation, or how can I find more information about that? You can always go to rrc.texas.gov. We've got contact information for all of our divisions, all sorts of resources, permitting applications, all sorts of things in there. So always, our website is a great resource as well. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. This is Texas Energy on Track, the official podcast for the Railroad Commission of Texas. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to y'all soon.